Chong the dog, and I'm here to read you chapter 21. As I said on the notes, this is a live recording of chapter 21. So I I'll respond to comments if I get them, but it is a live recording, and the previous chapters all are on playlists and numerical order. So the ones that are the larger numbers are the more recent, which should be the later chapters, and the ones in lower numbers would be the chapters and the earlier chapters. Plus, every day when I blog, I put everything in their own playlist, which is one thing. So it makes it easy to find things. I try to make my life easy these days. Alright, this is chapter 21. And it starts out: the mob's worst nightmare takes the witness stand. It has been 6 years since FBI agent Joseph D. Pistone, aka Donnie Brazo, went under deep cover to infiltrate the Bonanno crime family. Now he prepares to testify about his life inside the mob. Against Piston, this 43 with a confident demeanor, he wears a dark blue sports coat, light blue slacks, and a striped red tie as he takes the oath. The jury is composed of 4 men and 8 women. Across the courtroom, which is filled with 150 spectators, are men. Brazo, once considered brothers during his life as a mafioso, or something like that. Benjamin, Lefty Guns, Ruggiero, John Cassini, Nicholas Santora, and Anthony Tomasolo, or something like that. All are on trial for racketeering conspiracy. Special Agent Piston is the key witness in this trial. That is evident by the fact that the mob has placed 500,000 bounty on his head. In the spring of 1976, when Joseph Piston volunteers to expose the mob, he has been an FBI agent for almost 7 years, with a wife and 3 daughters living in New York City. Never before has the Bureau successfully placed an agent inside the mafia, and Piston's chances of success in this clandestine world are slim. And yet, if ever there is an ideal candidate to pull it off, it is Joseph Piston. Special Agent grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, a street guy, in his own words, where he hung out in the mob-run social halls and witnessed mafia life firsthand. I know how wise guys acted, he will write in his autobiography. I need to find this autobiography. I knew the things to do and not to do. Keep your mouth shut at certain times. Don't get involved in things that don't concern you. Pistons brings special skills to his job. He speaks fluent Italian. Born into a family of Sicilian heritage, he looks the part, powerfully built, at 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, with broad shoulders, high forehead, and tough, streetwise confidence of a man who can handle himself under pressure. On the surface, Joe Piston easily passes a mob foot soldier. The FBI under J. F. Edgar Hoover rarely used undercover agents. And here's Joseph Pistone. I got a picture of him. There he is. Alright. The director believed they might be compromised in a criminal world full of vice and money. However, Joe Pistone has already proved himself a capable operator. Just having spent 2 years inside a vehicle theft ring, it has the ability to drive an 18-wheel truck that landed Piston in that assignment. But now the stakes are far higher. The special agent must convince the ferocious Bonanno crime family to trust him with secrets, a daunting task to say at least. Before going undercover, Pistone yeah, Pistone spends months immersing himself into his persona as a small-time jewel thief named Donnie Brasco. He attends FBI gemology classes, learn about precious stones and how they are legally bought and sold. Piston's name and employment record are erased from all FBI files. Co-workers and even good friends are not told of his assignment. His wife and daughters are relocated to a home in a different state. With a new last name and the realization they will never see Joe for months at a time. And even then, he will only be home for a day or so. At first, the family is fine. Maggie Pistone and the girls all welcome their new circumstance. But in time, the strain of Piston's job and long periods of separation will lead Maggie to deeply resent her husband's job. To escape questions, his teenage daughters tell friends their parents are divorced. He will miss all the family birthdays and graduations. Making matters even worse, Pistone is not allowed to tell his family about his assignment, leaving him completely in the dark as to why he is abandoning them for such long periods of time. The FBI gives Pistone two apartments, one in Miami and one on the Upper East Side, Manhattan. He also possesses, under his new name, credit card, social security identification, a driver's license, and a monthly stipend of spending money so he can look and act like a gangster. Joe Piston is a driven man, but he feels the enormous guilt over leaving his family. In September 1976, Donnie Brasco goes into action. He is on his own, unable to make immediate contact with the Bureau if things go wrong. The agents meet once a month with FBI official who replenishes his cash. But as far as protection is concerned, Brasco has none. The chances of taking a bullet behind the ear is very high. The undercover operation is supposed to last 6 months. Instead, it continues for 5 perilous years. You got a beef? Donnie Brasco asked the mobster known as Patsy. Brasco's immersion into the underworld begins by frequenting bars and restaurants known to be mob hangouts and befriending small-time gangsters. For the most part, Brasco finds it tedious. I'll play cards. Drink a little, hang out, he will remember. The agent refrains from asking too many questions to avoid suspicion. He soon will become part of a crew of hijackers in Brooklyn, knowing that his first order of business each day is to check in with the crew boss sometime between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock a.m. On this particular morning, Roscoe's outspoken behavior and brash reputation become source of irritation to crew boss Gilly Greco, who asks his second in command, a Mafaso named Patsy, to see if Brasco is legitimate. You might say you pulled off all the scores down in Miami before you came here, Patsy says to Brasco, but we never, well, we don't know anything about that. So Frankie and me want to know somebody you did those jobs with, or we can check you out. You don't need to check me out, Brasco responds. I don't have to satisfy you just because you were in the can. Yeah, you do, Patsy replies. Let's go back inside and sit down. The two men walk in a clothing store on 15th Avenue where Lily maintains an office. Its name is at ACERG. Lily's last name spelled backwards. So that's interesting. The front section features racks of low price clothing procured by hijacking garment trucks and burglaring other establishments. The back four rooms features a desk and card tables where Jilly's crew hangs out. When they got up each morning, they didn't think about going to work or punching a time clock to snowball right. The mob was their job. You got up and went to the club, wherever you hung out, and spent your day with those guys. Right, now we got here. Patsy pulls a loaded pistol from a drawer and places it on the desk. You don't have to leave it here unless you give me a name. Brasco knows he cannot give in, at least for a while. His undercover status means that he actually does possess the name of a low level informant in Miami who will vouch for his agent's criminal reputation by passing along a name too quickly that will mark Brasco as a potential snitch. So, in this first dangerous confrontation, Brasco blusters, I'm not going to give up the name just to satisfy your curiosity, he tells Patsy. You got a effing smart mouth. You don't give me a name. The only way you leave here is in a rolled up rug. You gotta do what you gotta do, but I ain't giving you a name. A short time later, after calculating odds, Brasco takes a chance and gives up a name. Then he is locked in a room with several other mobsters where they play cards and smoke while Patsy checks out Brasco's story, sorry. We sat there for hours, especially everyone but me was smoking. We all sat and breathed that crap, played cards, and bullshitted. Joseph Pistone, legged or right. His nervous, he is nervous knowing there's no way out of the room. The gun is still on the table, but a room full of Mafasi all have their own guns anyways. Finally, Patsy returns wearing a relieved look. We got an answer, and your guy okayed you. After a year of serendipity, recording conversation and memorizing the names and license plate numbers of New York Mafazi, Donnie Braco is finally introduced to the higher-ups in the Bonanno family. He quickly befriends mobsters Anthony Mira and Dominic Napolino, who eventually trust him thoroughly that in his mob relationship is a fate accomplished. Brasco not only gets on the inside, but increasingly becomes a trusted companion of Benjamin Lefty Guns Ruggiero, a rising member of the Manano outfit. I'm telling you now, pal, you belong to me alone, Ruggiero tells Brasco as he brings him into the family. I'll die with you. I know that, Brasco replies. Alright, now that you are affiliated officially, Ruggiero tells him, cementing Joseph Pistone as the greatest undercover agent in FBI history, but one that may perish at any time. Lefty Ruggiero is a vicious killer known to have at least 26 confirmed murders. Brasco's initial role is to assist Ruggiero's bookmaking operation, but in time, their friendship grows so strong that Brasco dines often at Ruggiero home in Manhattan. He counsels Lefty in dealing with the mobster stepson, who is addicted to heroin. Ruggiero himself is a gambling addict, and Brasco covers some of his debts on a daily basis. Donnie Brasco's life becomes a long sequence of mafia and social clubs, bars, parties, and card games. As a wise guy, you can lie, you can cheat, you can steal, you can kill people legitimately, Ruggiero tells Brasco. You could do any goddamn thing you want. Nobody could say anything about it. Who wouldn't want to be a wise guy? Through it all, Donnie Brasco's friendship with Lefty Ruggiero grows deeper. The two men become so close that a mobster even asks a special agent to serve as best man for his 1977 wedding to his second wife, Louise. By February 1980, the connection between Brasco and Ruggiero escalates into a dangerous situation. Lefty is pushing for Brasco to become a made man inside the mob. That means Donnie Branco would have to execute someone in service to the Bonanno family. FBI, of course, could never sanction that. Agents are prohibited from committing acts of violence other than self defense. The undercover operation is now in the fifth year, but problems are starting to accumulate. One March afternoon, Brasco and Ruggiero are sitting in the Miami restaurant when Lefty flipped through a copy of Time magazine. The mobster notices an unusual photograph of a yacht. They always are noticing something. A yacht named Left Hand. The vessel is a part of a story on the FBI and its undercover assets. Several months prior, Donnie Brasco had used that yacht to entertain a group of mafiosi and their wives in Beacon Bay. Ruggiero was part of the outgoing. The killer looks up from the magazine and immediately demands an explanation. Brasco is caught by surprise, but the gulp enough to say he knows nothing about FBI involvement with the yacht. Maybe, Brasco says he was scammed. Ruggiero is skeptical, but puts the matter aside, at least for the moment. Joseph Christine will later write that mobsters are thieves first and not primarily an organization of murderers. But in the midst of his new life comes a stark reminder of what happens when the mob turns on one of its own. On March 21st, 1980, just 2 weeks after the left hand incident in Miami shatters the agent's belief that he is invincible, a major mafia hit becomes national news. Powerful Philadelphia crime boss Angelo Bruno, known as Docile Don, for his unwillingness to use violence, is murdered by a single shotgun blast to the head while sitting in the passenger seat of a vehicle parked in front of his home. It quickly becomes apparent that the docile Don's close friend and consigliere, Antonio I don't know how to pronounce that name, also known as Tony Bananas. We'll go with Tony Bananas. Ordered the assassination without commission's approval. Within weeks, the 67-year-old Caponegro is kidnapped and murdered. His beaten corpse found nude in the car trunk of a Bronx. Agent Pistone knows he could be next in trunk of a car. In May 1981, the family begins to fracture. An intramural war breaks out after the Carmine Galene, head of the family, is shot dead during the ensuing power struggle. Three top members are lured to the 2020 nightclub in Brooklyn under the pretense of a peace meeting. The unarmed capos are led into a storeroom where they are machine gunned to death. Their bodies are subsequently wrapped. I think somebody just walked past my window. This is why I got them all boarded up. Gunned to death. Their bodies are subsequently wrapped in drop cloths. This gets more and more interesting, I'll tell you. And trampled to the border of Queens. It is to a place known as the Hole, where a number of murdered gangsters are buried. In court, Agent Pistone will later describe the bloody scene inside the storeroom, particularly how one of the mobsters, Dominic Big Trincera, met his demise, Nicky, referring to the defendant Nicholas Centura. Said you should have seen when they shot him. 50 pounds of his stomach went flying. The Banana Gang war spelled the beginning of the end for Pistone as a mob undercover. But before he could extradite himself, the family ordered him to kill a man named Bruno Indictito. There, once that was accomplished, Donnie Brasco would be a made man. In his time a member of the Bonanno family, Donnie Brasco has committed all manner of crimes ranging from loan sharking to racketeering, but murders too much. So on July 26, 1981, Donnie Brasco disappears from the mob. Returns to the FBI, he receives a $500 bonus for all the years of risking his life. 33 days later, Lefty Ruggiero is taken into custody by federal authorities for his own protection. The feds tell Ruggiero a contact has been taken out on his life because of his association with Donnie Brasco. Hoping to instill paranoia, FBI agents also inform Bonanno crime family members that their lifetime confidant Brasco will soon testify against him. On July 30th, Agent Doug Fensky meets with Dominic Napalno at a mafia social club known as Motion Lounge in Brooklyn. As proof, the agent holds a photograph of himself and two other agents standing in a New Jersey hotel with none other than... Okay, Chong. Alright, we're not doing all that. I'll go out when I'm done with this, and that's it. Okay, New Jersey hotel room, none other than Donnie Brasco. Dominic Napoleon knows his fate is sealed on August 17th, realizing. I am sorry. My dog's. Alright. Dominic Napoleon knows his fate is sealed on August 17th, realizing that death sentence has been issued in his name because Brasco served on his crew. Napatow hands a favorite bartender all of his personal jewelry and keys to an apartment, hoping that his pet pigeons will be cared for after his demise. Napatono is not seen again for almost a year when his decomposing body is located in in Staten Island Creek by a 17-year-old boy. The mobster's hands. Would you please stop? My camera keeps moving. Okay, by a 17-year-old boy. The mobster's hands have been cut off, signaling his designation as a snitch. Anthony Mira, the other mobster who brought Brasco into the Bonanno family, is also murdered. He is shot in the head several times by his own cousin under orders from the mob. After Joseph Piston's shocking court testimony, Benjamin Lefty Guns Ruggiero is sentenced to 20 years in prison. 200 indictments of more than 100 convictions come about as a result of undercover operation. If you're a bad guy, my job is to put you in the can. Piston will later write. Simple as that. But still, there is $500,000 bounty on his head. In a few days after the trial ends, a number of mafia dons in New York are surprised when they are visited by FBI agents. The conversations are very similar. The mobsters are informed that if anything should happen to Joseph Pistone and his family, they will pay dearly. After a few days later, the bounty on Pistone is lifted. By the mid 1980s, the organized crime in America has been badly damaged. The code of silence no longer sacred. One of the most powerful families, the Bonannos, have been infiltrated, and local drug gangs are challenging the Italians for control of narcotics industry. No longer is the mafia the dominant crime force in America. Now the mob is diminished, although still armed and dangerous, preying on human weakness. For decades, the mafia ran entire cities and industries all over America. Its power rivaled that of elected officials and the police. Those days are over, largely because people like Bobby Kennedy and Joseph Pistone risked their lives in order to crush evil. Today in America, the mob continues to operate and corrupt, but there are little security or safety for those participating in organized crime. They all realize that change has come and they know their brotherhood has been rendered obsolete. Now it is every made man for himself. That's pretty damn deep. I'm going to read this postscript because this plot kind of keeps thickening. It says on January 1962, Charles Lucky Lucino meets with American film producer Martin Gosh to discuss a motion picture based on his life. The conference takes place in the airport in Naples, Italy. An Italian police, uh, suspecting that Lucino is actually not even straight, here we go, is actually there to smuggle narcotics and are in hand to monitor his activities. So they are stunned when the mobster suddenly collapses from a heart attack and dies. For a funeral attended by 300 mourners held in Nepal 3 days later, but after the U.S. authorities allow the return of Lucino's remains to American soil, the actual burial takes place at St. John's Cemetery in Queens, New York, 2 weeks later. Ironically, given their profound hatred for each other, Luceno's grave site is very close to the tomb of Vito Genovese. The mobster continued to run his crime family from inside Atlanta Federal Penitentiary for 10 years. After suffering bouts of ill health, Genovese was transferred to the United States United Medical Center for Federal Prison in Springfield, Missouri, where he died of a heart attack on Valentine's Day. That's sad. 1969, at age 71, despite his passing, the Genovese crime family lives on to this day, controlling the Manhattan and Bronx with extended ties to organized crime in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Florida. I guess you gotta keep something. That's a lot of stuff going on. Alright, and this says Mayor Lansky is acquitted on charges of federal tax evasion in 1974. Lansky died in Miami of lung cancer at the age of 80 and is buried at Mount Nebo, Miami Memorial Gardens. Lansky left behind an estate of just 57,000, but the FBI believes the mob's most accomplished accountant stashed estimated 300 million in secret bank accounts around the world. The money has still not been found. He had his stuff good. Joseph Valachi, a former Genovese family soldier and infamous cellmate of Vito, remained in prison for the rest of his life as FBI Special Agent Flynn once encouraged him. Joseph Valachi took up his exercise regimen and lost 40 pounds, however, he did not quit his habit of smoking. 60 cigarettes a day? That's a lot. Wow. Valachi suffered from a heart attack and died on April 3rd, 1970, while serving a sentence at the Federal Correctional Facility in Latuna, Texas. He was 77. Valachi is buried at the Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Lewiston, New York. Wow. Tampa crime boss Santo Trafficante, New Orleans Don Carlos Marcello, New York family leader Joe Bonanno, and former head of Lusano family Frank Costello, all longtime cohorts in the nationwide crime syndicate, lived long enough to die of natural causes. Trafficante passed at the age of 72 after undergoing unsuccessful heart surgery in Houston. He is buried at the El Union Italian Cemetery in Ybor City, Florida. Though he's been dead since 1987, his family exists to this day. Marcello suffered from a series of strokes in 1989 and lived out his days as a retired capo in his home in Louisiana before passing away. He is buried at Metrier Cemetery north of downtown in New Orleans. Joe Bonanno spent his retirement in Arizona, where he wrote his autobiography, A Man of Honor. Bonanno died in 2002, 1 year before its publication. He is buried at Holy Hope Cemetery in Tucson, Arizona. Frank Costello lived to the age of 82, enjoying 16 years of senior citizen activity in Manhattan. Although officially retired, he remained in touch with New York's crime bosses and consulted on many activities. Costello suffered a heart attack and died on February 18, 1973. He is interred in a mausoleum in St. Michael's Cemetery in Queens, New York. The death of Sonny Liston was just uh, tumultuous to his life. He passed on January 30th, 1970, alone in his Las Vegas home. It is only when his wife Geraldine returned from a long trip that Liston's decomposing body was discovered. The former world heavyweight boxing champion, thought to be 38 years old, had been dead 6 days. The official ruling was natural causes, specifically poor circulation, but a balloon of heroin was found in his bedroom, leading some to suspect he was received. He received a mafia hotshot, in which a lethal injection is given to the target. The truth will never be known. Wow. Muhammad Ali, Liston's opponent in two of boxing's most famous matches, fought professionally until 1981. By the end of his career, having absorbed the estimated tens of thousands punches, the champ began suffering from palsy and speech difficulties. This was later diagnosed as Parkinson's disease, from which Ali died on March 3rd, 2016, at the age of 74. He is buried in his homeland in Louisville, Kentucky. The passing of Judith Campbell Exner went almost unnoticed. She was promised confidentially in exchange for appearing before the church committee, but when her identity was leaked out to the media in 1975, Campbell retired from public eye, wounded by the criticism over her extramarital affair with JFK, and fearful that a mafia hit was imminent. Julie eventually married golf pro Dan Exner in 1975, but was long divorced when she died of cancer in 1999. At age 65, her ashes were scattered at sea. As for the Rat Pack, actor former Kennedy brother-in-law Peter Lawford died of a heart attack in 1984. Sammy Davis Jr. died of lung cancer in 1990. Dean Martin succumbed to same cancer in 1995, suffered from multiple organ failure in 2007, but it was the passing of Frank Sinatra that has received the most attention. Many, including Sinatra himself, believe that he was the inspiration for the Johnny Fontaine character in The Godfather, written by Mario Puzo. When the two accidentally met at Jason's restaurant in Hollywood, Sinatra berated the author as a pimp. The legendary crooner first retired from singing in 1971, only to resume his career almost immediately thereover. Sinatra continued performing to 1995 when the onset of undiagnosed mental health issues, the use of various narcotics caused him to forget song lyrics. While on stage, Frank Sinatra died of a heart attack on May 14th, 1998, at age 82. He is buried with a bottle of Jack Daniels and a pack of Camel cigarettes in the Desert Memorial Park in Cathedral City. Now that's a way to be buried. A bottle of Jack and Camel cigarettes. I love Camel cigarettes, especially the ones that you press to get your month off. Wow. In Cathedral City, California. Over the decades, a number of laws have been passed to crack down on organized crime, but it was Rico's statue that in 1970 that forever altered the balance of power between law enforcement and the mob. The Racketeer and for Influence the Corrupt Organizations Act and makes it legal to run a criminal enterprise, allowing prosecution of a crime family boss for actions he authorized but did not personally commit. In essence, RICO has been the first act of outlawing organized crime rather than specific mob activity. It has been applied to a wide range of members of groups and individuals such as Hells Angels, financer Michael Milken, and even Key West, Florida Police Department, which ran a protection racket in exchange for cocaine in the 1980s. In February 1985, United States Attorney Rudolph Giuliani indicted nine mafiosi, including leaders of New York Five families, for labor, racketeering, extortion, and murder for hire. The commission, the crime syndicate, first formed by Lucky Luciano in 1931, was dealt severe blow when nine bosses were convicted. Anthony Bruno and Delito Capo of the Bonanno family and the man Donnie Brasco. Alright, here we go. Was asked to execute in 1981, was sentenced to 40 years in prison and fined $55,000, the most latent of all sentences. All the other mobsters were sentenced to 100 years and fined to a minimum of $240,000, with the exception of Indelico, have all since died in prison. Bruno was released in 1998 only to be arrested again for parole violations. He was subsequently charged with murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Anthony Indelico is due to be released in 2023. During the course of Mafia Commission trial, as the proceedings will become known, a new boss took over the Gambino family, John Gotti, 34 at the time, brutally assassinated acting leader Paul Costello to take control. Gordy quickly consolidated power, taking over an empire ranking an estimated 500 million each year. Rather than hiding from publicity, Gotti courted it, wearing expensive suits and affecting public persona that earned him the nickname Draper Don. This was received by Teflon Don after three indictments against Gotti failed to result in convictions. Later, it was revealed that jury tampering played a role in his acquittals. On June 23, 1992, Gotti was finally convicted on 5 counts of murder as well as loan sharking, obstruction of justice, bribery, and tax evasion. His sentence was life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Gotti died in prison of throat cancer on June 10, 2002, at the age of 61. His crypt is at St. John Cemetery, New York, near the graves of Lucky Lucinio and Vito Genovese. Joseph Pistons, who years undercovers Donnie Brasco, presented a major coup for the FBI, still lives in seclusion with his wife, Maggie, and their daughters are grown. Pistone has written 3 books based on his experience, which was made in the 1997 movie Demise Brasco, starring Al Pacino and Johnny Depp. Pistone is still active in law enforcement, serving as consultant to agencies around the world, as well as testifying before the U.S. Senate on organized crimes. He's keeping busy. Benjamin Lefty Guns Ruggiero, the mafia of whom Pistone was mostly closely associated during his time inside the mob, was released from prison in April 1993 after serving a little more than 10 years of a sentence. Ruggiero died of cancer in 1994 at the age of 68. He is buried in the Calvary Cemetery in Queens, in New York. To this day, mafia in New York City is still powerful. The September 11, 2001 terror attacks played a key role shifting FBI manpower away from organized crime in order to surveil possible terrorists. The number of agents of the Bureau Organized Crime Task Force was reduced from 400 to fewer than 30. Since then, the American Mafia has become more international, forging links with the Mexican and Colombian drug cartels, as well as organized crime elements in Italy's Calabria region. In 2008, Operation Old Bridge, a joint FBI-Italian operations, confirmed this connection, leading to dozens of arrests in both countries. Today, the FBI estimates there are currently 3,000 members of the Mafia in America, but organized crime under siege from other criminals, Russian, Chinese, Vietnamese organizations, Mexican cartels, and homegrown African American drug gangs have encroached on the mob's turf. However, none have succeeded on the same level as La Cosa Nostra. This is due to the right hierarchical structure and constant recruitment of new soldiers who are threatened with death shall they inform. The Mafia has also prospered by outsourcing much of its illegal activity, a recent development that would later occur in the days of Lucky Lucinio and Vito Genovese. Also, the mob has become high-tech savvy. The internet is a major source of revenue, using offshore shell corporations as a front for illicit gambling. The same is true of identifying theft, stealing credit card numbers, personal information from internet porn, and wagering sites is big business for organized crime. Then they say, as they have for decades, mom-linked companions will still control some of the nation's major construction projects, particularly in New York City. And Bill O'Reilly's book, The United States of Trump. I gotta find this book. The president openly discusses mafia power. Mr. Trump needed concrete and waste management to build the Trump Tower in Manhattan, so he had to deal directly with the mob. Gone are the days when crime families used restaurants and clubs to organize publicity. Today, mafia meetings are much of clandestine and cell phones never allowed, eliminating risk of tapping or filming procedures. And so the fight against organized crime continues, and sadly, the war will never be won. Yet simply there's too much money in criminal activity, especially narcotics, and too many bad people willing to harvest it. I gotta get this Trump book. That's all I know. This is a pretty badass writer here. But anyways, we have completed this whole book. And thank you for listening to my stream. I got to finish what I wanted to do today with my blogging, and that was finish my book. So I'm probably going to go take a bath and try to relax a little bit now. And thank you for listening. And I'm going to try to do some live streaming later. Our new book, which is going to be Weekend with Daisy. I mean, we need a break from that. So I'm gonna do that. It's about a service dog, and I have one, so I figure why not. So I will talk to you guys later, and thank you for listening to me. And I appreciate everything that you do.